Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to MBA Waves. It is Tuesday. My name is Eric CRHESCER, your host today for MBA Waves. And as always, I am joined by my fabulous co-host, Bara Sapir in San Francisco. Bara, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Bara Sapir with City Test Prep and MindFlow, and spring is here. Spring is springing. There are flowers everywhere. It's so delightful this time of year. So I'm pretty psyched to be joining you and seeing the beautiful sunshine outside.
Nice. Thanks, Bara. And once again, my name is Eric CRHESCER. I'm the founder of Candidate Coach. I work with people applying for MBAs and master programs all over the world, defining a strategy that's going to be competitive in face of pretty top competition. And this week on MBA Waves, we are talking about the importance of mentoring and coaching. And so we have a special guest joining us all the way from Angola named Suzana da Rosa, who I'm going to ask to introduce herself in a moment. Suzana is going to tell us a little about the kind of coaching she does and what she sees in her clients and how important mentoring is in the process of either getting to a school or in the workplace or just in life. So, Suzana, welcome to MBA Waves. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Suzana da Rosa from Angola in Africa. I am a coach. I've been a coach since 2019, but very recently operating actually as a coach. And I mainly focus on high-performing coach and some career coaching as well. So I founded CRHESCER Consultoria exactly to look at coaching and training. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So it's more like coaching in the workplace.
Coaching in the workplace, yeah. Capitalizing on my 18 years experience in human resources.
Okay. Yeah, I actually met Suzana on a LinkedIn Live event, another LinkedIn Live event, and I just noticed her comments and I ended up connecting with her. We had a phone call. We do similar kind of work, and I thought it would be great to have her join us for a different perspective on coaching. So you mentioned HR. Tell us a little bit more about your experience prior to founding CRHESCER Consultoria.
Yeah, so I did a business administration degree and focusing a little bit on HR. And when I finished, that's the job I got. So I got a job as a human resources trainee at the time. And I progressed for 18 years, moving to different companies, doing HR, mainly generalist work. And then the latest one was more as a talent developer, like a career manager. So I always like to develop people. So I after the 18 years, after 15 years, I started to question, what exactly do I want to do? What else is there for me? So that is why I discovered coaching, and I really fell in love. I got a coach, and I started working on myself, and then I really saw the impact of coaching. I mean, what coaching can do to people's life, and it was great. So that's where I am today. That's where I am.
That makes me think of that metaphor, like when you're in the airplane and the oxygen masks come down, you have to kind of serve yourself before you can help other people.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what you did. You've had a pretty great career working at some major companies like Total, the French national oil and gas company, as well as GlaxoSmithKline. So you've been in a couple different industries. What made you first have the instinct to see a coach for yourself?
Yeah, it was in fact I did some internal coaching already. Because I was a high performing employee, so we had the people mentoring us, and I got exposure to coaching so that I could coach other employees and some managers. So I didn't start this experiencing it myself directly, but for employees and especially some leaders. And there was a time I was managing 10 countries. I was the HR manager for 10 countries, and I had to help the country managers from the HR side and a little bit of coaching to help them with the people and so on. So that was my first experience with coaching, but I didn't really know much about coaching. It was more like I'm doing my HR role, and this is a component of that role. Then when I left GlaxoSmithKline, because it closed, my countries that I was servicing. In fact, it closed in 29 countries in Africa, and 500 employees had to be let go. So I was one of them. And then I started to question, and I started to search, what am I going to do next? And that's when I found coaching. And then I decided, okay, what can this thing really do? When I started to read, I said, okay, let me look for someone who can help me, because I could see that I wanted something different. I wanted to grow and enhance whatever I was, develop. So I looked for a coach, and I found this Brazilian lady in Selma, and she helped me so much, very much on a personal level. That was very life coaching, and I started to really discover things that I didn't know about myself. For example, my relationship with money, the way I saw things, my stereotypes, things that I was not really aware that I had. So it was very, very interesting to, in that sense, very, very interesting. And it really, really helped me not get out of the box, and really, I see coaching like you, it's like the lion in me got out,
Mm.
because I was very scared. I grew up very scared of being judged, not being good enough, all those things that many of us had. And my coach really helped me with that, self confidence. Even to sometimes, I was working at Total at the time, in fact, and even how I approached managers, I could see things changing. How I
Mm.
approached managers, how I spoke I've spoken in public for many years, but it just felt different. There was just some flavor there that was added, and it
You
was
know,
great.
I do coaching also with my clients because so many students come to us with test anxiety and issues and everything you're talking about that you did that you did in your internal work. Students feel that immensely, right? They're going to apply to these programs. All of a sudden, they haven't taken a test in a long time, right?
Mm,
And all this judgment comes up. And I worked with someone fairly recently who was applying to a different graduate program, but she had first come to me for her test because she had some issues. And now that she's in the program, she told me that she's in a law school. She told me that everyone comes to her for the questions and for the tests that they have in the finals, but that when she goes into the exam, she's got issues. And so we started unpacking it. And I'm totally drawing on the life coaching that
okay.
I've worked on with folks. And what's interesting is that I kind of feel that relationships that we have are our intimate mirrors, but to really work through the issues that come up in relationship, having a coach or having a confidant that can actually mirror back what's going
Yeah.
on, so you don't have to actually have the relationship be the full laboratory, right? So I'm
Mhm.
bringing in a lot of different pieces here, but all of the having an intentional coach, having someone who's really giving you that mirror and that feedback allows a person to get different perspective and learn so much about themselves, which is exactly what you're talking about, Suzana. So I'm on board. I agree with
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to
It-
echo what Bara just said. I mean, Suzanne, you said a lot of really interesting things. First of all, I think that the kind of people that are attracted to this profession as a coach are people like you, people like Bara, people like myself, who have an innate curiosity about people, that are interested in people, that have a certain sense of what makes them tick by listening. And that's another big piece about being a good listener, an active listener. So I think most people that are doing this kind of thing, they are drawn to it because they have the right personality. The second thing is, it's interesting that in your HR role, when you were working for Total and for GlaxoSmithKline, you were an HR manager across so many different countries, right? So you're dealing
yeah.
with different laws, different culture, different languages, and that's very
Mhm.
interesting. It makes you think very much of the MBA world, where that's largely why people, not always, but largely why people pursue a top MBA program, is to have a global career, right? To have a very international dimension to their career. So you've like picked up and refined a skill very much that is very interesting and relevant to our MBA applicants and listeners out there. Also, like what people are studying in the MBA, like throughout the program, not only are they perhaps changing countries, but they're studying the program with people from all over the world and are very often going to relocate. So that international dimension is very, I think, valuable to people who may be interested in working with you. And the other thing that really struck me was you personally, your journey when you were working with a coach. You learned so many things about yourself that you didn't even realize were there. You mentioned how your relationship with money or various other things, and that's, I think, one of the biggest things that comes out with coaching. And I know that's a big thing with what Bara does, and really tapping into, like, let's say, like the hidden sides to your personality or your brain or whatever that can be brought out polished, amplified, and become one of your biggest assets. Maybe it was something you were afraid of. You mentioned fear, and that ties into what Bara does with test anxiety and test prep. Yeah, it's very interesting what can come out. You may go in for one specific need to meet the coach, but you may come out with like 10 different solutions that you didn't know. And I think that's fantastic.
Or sometimes you might go in for a particular lesson, but then that doesn't actually get solved, but you get the teaching that you're supposed to get. Right? You get the exact, I don't know if you want to call it medicine, but like you get the exact feedback and perspective that you really needed.
Yeah.
In fact, I had a client. Sorry. Yeah, I had a client. In fact, he was a very senior guy. He was in his 50s, and he came to me because he was up for a promotion to be on the board. So he came to me very serious, very, in the disc profile, very deep, very focused on results, very direct. And he came to me for that. But as we did the process, I think after 3 sessions, we were mainly focusing on how he can balance work, and he realized how intense he was, how insensitive he was with his employees. So we then ended up working on him directly, not so much on the leader, but on him as a person. So it's very true that sometimes you think you come for a specific thing, but then you realize, okay, it's bigger than that, it's deeper than that. And that is many times the experience. Yeah.
A lot of people, when they're studying, well, I should say it this way, a lot of MBA programs offer training in leadership, right? It's not just about managing finances, marketing, and so forth, but leadership. And leadership is very much about personality and understanding how other personalities work, how to motivate them, what are their pain points, what are their fears, how do you get them around that to, lead a team and to get towards your shared goal. And you learn a lot about yourself. There's a lot of psychology. You might do a lot of personality tests. And you might realize that you're maybe not as open as you thought you were. Maybe you come off a lot more judgmental or intimidating. You might be too strong. You might be not assertive enough. Like there's so many things you learn about yourself, and that's during the MBA program. But something that Bara and I, and with a lot of our guests in the past, have talked about is, the MBA program is also very much a life skills program. And even the process of applying, whether it's working on your essays or working in your GMAT, there's so many like life skills and questions that come out during that process. So if you want to look at it this way, working with a coach to help you dive into that stuff before you get into your MBA program gives you kind of the edge that you've already started working on these things before you are going to be formally working on it in your program. And it just puts you ahead of the game, I think.
Yeah. I've often... I'm sorry, Suzana.
No, go ahead, Bara. Go ahead.
I mean, I often say the way that we do some things are the way we do all things, right? So if and it's a little loud, that's why I muted. So let me know if it's garbage collection day in the Bay Area, at least in my neighborhood. So I think what you're saying is really true, Eric, is that if you can sort of clean out the attic, clean out the basement, and kind of figure out what's making you tick, and how is that revelation even going to, that might be present in your essays, because you might discover something about yourself and in the choices you made, either good or bad, right? Like something that didn't work that really profoundly changed you, or something that did work that you felt really humbled by. Like it could go either way. It's just about having, I believe, like a deep awareness and presence and humility, and I think that the more human you appear, the greater leader you become, right? So like you look at everything that Zelensky's doing, he's like, I'm just a guy. And like in German or Yiddish, the word for a guy is mensch. It's like being a mensch-like person. It's reduced to like the most simple word. It's like you're being a human. You're being like, that's what being human is about, is
authenticity,
on
right?
the good side of it. What?
Authentic, yeah. I think authentic. Yeah, being very authentic. Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Authentic and real, relatable, and not top down necessarily. It's like being relatable and having that rapport, right? In that leadership. Yeah. I mean, and mentoring like that. How does one mentor, right? How does one get into a role of being a mentor versus a coach, right? So what would you say the differences are between the two of those?
I think it has a lot to do with the intention that is being done, and also what people are looking for. So, for example, when you speak of a coach, a mentor, I mean, when you speak of a mentor, we're talking about someone who has the experience, the skills. He has gone through that process, and now he's pulling you for you to also get to that level, to a growth level, to a development level in a specific area. But when you're talking to coaching, the coach doesn't have to have the specific experience in your area, but he or she is there to help you achieve your objectives, your goals, to develop you to a certain direction that you also want. But more importantly, like you mentioned earlier, in terms of being the human that you really be, those skills that will help you to help develop you as well, you know. And if I may, I remember when I was in one of the companies, I was coaching an employee, and he was very technical. He was an engineer. In the first session, he told me, Suzana, you cannot really coach me. You don't know anything about my job. You know why? Because he was perceiving me as a mentor, not as a coach. So I had to explain to him that, look, I don't have to know about your skills or your job. I'm here to help you develop as a person. You know, you're taking out the cap of an engineer, and you just become yourself, and I'm gonna help you in the process. You know, so that's how I see the difference.
That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I feel like I've had both coaches and mentors, and my mentors, by and large, were things like in the arts. When I was more involved in the arts, I was working with this amazing artist theologian, and the coaches, it was all about how do I take understanding one aspect about myself, and then how can that sort of blossom into other aspects. Like, how can I understand myself more deeply in these different areas, and how does that allow me to live in a better, deeper, more profound and desirable way ultimately.
Yeah.
So Bara, you didn't talk very much about what you're doing right now with City Test Prep or MindFlow. Do you want to get into that, and like your journey, like how you became a coach and why, like what things you picked up along the way and so forth?
Sure. So I just mentioned that I just sort of like dropped in that I was in the arts. I was working in the arts. I was a fine artist. And what was happening as an artist is that I was spending, 8, 10, 12 hours in the studio creating artwork. So whatever someone calls mindful meditation, I was actually doing that in making art and getting into the zone. But at the same time, when I was in graduate school, which was in art history at University of Michigan, I found that all of a sudden, all of this time that I was in my meditation was completely cut off because I was doing academic study. And at the same time, I was working for one of the big test prep companies, helping other people get into graduate school. And even though I was teaching students and teaching them everything that I knew, and we were trained and we had a script, because big box companies typically work that way, is that it's scripted. It's not straight education usually. But my students, they would learn everything, but they were falling through the cracks. So I thought, what can I do to get them to the next level? Like, how do I get them to perform? They would go into the test, they wouldn't perform as well, but in school or in the class that I was teaching, all the diagnostics, they did great. So I started drawing from my art background, and I'm also a musician. So I was
No pun intended there, drawing from your art background.
No pun intended.
Yeah.
And I just found that if I was able to help them draw on the times and places that they felt that time evaporated, it just slipped away, and they felt really present and really just so calm and so in the moment, that if I can translate that and make the bridge to taking the test, that they were going to perform a lot better. So for years I was doing different things, being creative. And then I discovered that a lot of what I was doing was similar to hypnosis and visualization. And it was similar to other modalities. And so I got certified in life coaching and hypnosis and NLP. And I started doing a little bit of work in EMDR connected to tapping. And so eventually I have a whole toolbox that I work with students on the anxiety piece. So what City Test Prep does is it deals with the four pillars of being successful on tests: content mastery, test taking strategy, time management, and mindset. So the mindset piece is the coaching, and the time management, we discovered we could use speed reading, right? So speed reading is a way to just move through essays faster. And a student doesn't need to read 1,000 words a minute, but if they're reading 300 words per minute or less, they're hurting their score, because 80% of what you're tested on comes from 20% of what you read. So since 2005, when I opened the company, we've been teaching a speed reading piece for test takers. We have a GMAT track, a GRE track, an LSAT track. And during COVID, I opened up a new company and platform, which is taking that speed reading live workshop that we were doing online for years, but I actually put it online. And so that's Mindflow, and it does have a mindset channel as well. So it trains speed reading, and it also has yoga, nutrition, mindset pieces, meditation, binaural beat technology. So it's sort of a state-of-the-art speed reading test prep product that is really great for tutors who are working with students, because it gives them things for their students that they don't typically have. And it's also great for end users.
Very cool. Yeah, I did test it out, like the beta version. I actually saw improvement in what I was able to do, because I'm a slow reader. So Suzana, just kind of to jump back to you, what are the main types of clients you have these days? Like, who are you working with?
Yeah. So because I'm doing high performance, and because of my HR experience, I focus at the moment on professionals. So I help ambitious professionals, those who want to really want to succeed and do different in their careers, but also struggling with the personal life. So I help them succeed on their professional without compromising their personal life, which is a big challenge for many professionals, especially as we progress to more senior level, and even the specialists, that they struggle to have that balance and be successful. So that's the main people I work with.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then, like, are you finding that like companies are very supportive of having internal mentors, or are they bringing in people from outside?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
Are you finding that companies, like big corporations, multinational companies, they are like supportive of the idea of mentoring? And if so, do they have people internal, like people who work within the company, whether it's the HR department or just maybe a more seasoned professional, or are they bringing in external coaches to work with?
Yeah, in Angola, coaching is still very recent. Okay, people are not very used to coaching, and especially because people have this idea in general that is an advisor, so I can just go to my friend or to someone I know to ask for an advice on what to do and so on. So there is lots of work there. The type of companies that are already experience it more at the multinationals, because they have the international experiences, and normally in terms of mentorship they have more senior managers mentoring the younger ones.
Yeah.
And in terms of coaching, they do hire coaches. But not so much as, for example, in Europe or in America. It's still something new. But we're trying to convince them to do it and showing them the advantages and also the return on the investment. To see how can they really gain. Not just the person, the teams, and the whole company. So we do have lots of work here on this side. In terms
What's
of that.
interesting is you mentioned like how you see it's happening much more in the US and not necessarily where in the world you are. But what's interesting about these companies, multinational companies, they transcend borders, right? So like, although maybe it's not happening particularly in Angola as a whole, say, I don't know, Accenture has brought the culture of coaching, which is live and well in the US or North America, over to Africa, at least in there, and that can from there it can spread around. That's very interesting to influence the impact that business has on culture and society.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Bara, I had one question for you also. Like, have you had a mentor or coach, and like how have they made a difference for you?
So I mentioned that I worked with a theologian, an artist theologian in Israel. I was living there and I was working with her for 2 years. And the way that, I mean, basically, I was in Israel for 2 years studying the relationship between spirituality and creativity. And I was creating art and working with musicians and artists. And Dr. Joe Milgram, who is an incredible artist, and the way that I felt she is such a trailblazer in her field, and working so closely with her was, I mean, for me, it was a profound experience because I was able to create artwork in an environment that felt more familial than academic. And so, I mean, we're still in touch, not as much as I know we both like, because technology, she's not necessarily very great at technology and I'm pretty busy, but I feel like what it did was it really personalized a lot of the work that I was doing in reading Jewish text and having conversations about it. I have not had as much mentorship in running a business, but I do feel that, I mean, I do have a business partner and he's sort of a business guy. I feel like all of the mentoring that I've had and being an artist actually makes me a better coach and makes me a really good person with compassion and empathy for my students and what they're going through and the kind of performance anxieties that they have. But I haven't had as much mentoring in the business realm at all. So I definitely learned from you, Eric. I wouldn't say you're a mentor, but I definitely learn a ton from you and all of the folks that I meet in the business world. So that's been, I feel like collaboration is such an amazing opportunity to learn from other people.
Definitely. I mean, something that I've always known that like people who are starting something up, like entrepreneurs, especially if you're on the young side, it's very helpful to collaborate with other people, even if you're not working in the same field, to have that synergy. Like that appears a lot in co-working these days, but now that I've like lived it, you know, I'm like 2 years into running my own company. I think Suzana, you're relatively at the same stage, right? You're about a year or two in full time.
Yeah, well, in fact, full time about 8 months, full time. So very new.
Cool. And so I think it's very, very helpful. You know, you get sort of that spark of motivation. You can sort of like unload some stuff that's stressing you, but you get new ideas, best practices. And that's also why I'm excited to be doing this AGAT conference, which is happening also right now. I have to jump back into shortly. But just to finish off, because this is all about MBAs, and a lot of MBA applicants are sometimes hesitant to use a coach, whether it's for the GMAT or for the full application strategy. But they're afraid that that will be poorly seen. The school might judge them as, oh, you're like getting an unfair advantage or something like that. But actually, it's not the case, because all throughout your MBA program and afterwards, you're very much encouraged by business schools to use a mentor, to have a mentor in your life. So it's very much, I think, ingrained in the values of most business schools that mentoring works, that mentoring matters, and it's something you should go for. So I don't think it's something you should be afraid to do. Obviously, there's a very fine and distinct line between somebody who's mentoring you and cheating, if you're talking about your application, right? No coach or MBA consultant or mentor should be writing your essays for you, or doing anything unethical. It all has to come from you, but they're there to help you, to push you to bring ideas out, like we talked about earlier, and to help you be the best applicant you can be. And I didn't talk so much about my journey, but I was really, you know, I've been in education and admissions and so forth for 20 something years. And I started doing candidate coach full time. It'll be 2 years this summer. And when I was working at Second Business School in particular, I was an admissions, I was a recruiter, an admissions person, and I was, you know, in charge of bringing people in. But I really enjoyed working with people to help them be the best applicant they could be, right? Because I had goals to reach in terms of numbers of people I'd recruit for my territories. And so the stronger my applicants were, the better, more likely I'd reach my targets, right? So I discovered by doing that over the years that I really enjoyed getting to know people, helping them, inspiring them, and helping them be the best version of themselves. And that's kind of where I got my like instincts for coaching from. So here I am.
You know, I'll say one more thing, actually.
Yeah.
that's Eric. First of all, I don't think I computed that you've been in education for 20 years. It's good for me to hear about that again, because all the different the areas that you have been in serve your clients so well, right? Because you have such a great vantage point. I will say that one thing I did do, even though I didn't have a mentor, is that I have colleagues and friends that I would always bounce ideas off of. So I almost have an informal brain trust board.
And that works too.
Yeah, which I think has been super effective, especially in the areas that I don't do. And they've also encouraged me to delegate, right? It's like, I don't have to be all things in the work that I do. So that's been a great lesson, since 2005, that I've had other people doing things with me.
100%. Suzana, any final comments? We're going to wrap up the episode, or a little bit.
I think one thing that I think sometimes people struggle, say, okay, should I really get a coach or not? And they say, okay, I'll just go to online, I'll go read self-help books and so on. And while these things are also important, I think with coaching and even a mentor, it helps you fast track, and I think the idea of you achieving more in less time, I think that's really, really one of the biggest advantages, because sometimes from your side, from your eyes, you don't see the things, but with the help of someone, you'll see further, you'll see more, and you'll see in as well, So yeah.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much, Suzana, for joining us today. Thank you, everyone in the audience who is listening or watching the recording after the fact, whether here on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. Next week, we will have our 50th episode. Hard to believe, huh, Bara?
I can't believe it.
I know. That's going to be May 10th, and that's actually one day before I checked it out. The first episode, if you click on the tab for past episodes, you can see the very first episode was May 11th. So we're just about 1 year, and it's very exciting. We're joined by Ray Letsky, who works for InStride, which is an organization that creates partnerships between companies and schools to have company-sponsored MBAs. So he called it Back to the Future, because this is a thing of the past and it's making a comeback. So very excited for next week's episode on MBA Waves. You can see the full schedule at mbawaves.com. And also you can reach out to us if you'd like to suggest any topics or if you'd like to be a guest. So thank you, everyone, once again, and have a good day.
Thank you, Suzana.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Bye-bye.